Michael Jordan decided to follow his housekeeper and uncovered a heartbreaking story. The furrowed brow of Michael Jordan contrasted with his usual calm demeanor as he watched Mrs. Fatima slip out through the back door of his luxurious Chicago mansion. It was the third time that week that his housekeeper, who had worked for him for 8 years, left abruptly after receiving a mysterious phone call. The former basketball legend, accustomed to reading the game on the court, sensed something was wrong. Normally, Fatima was the epitome of efficiency and dedication. Of Nigerian descent, like Jordan's close friends, she arrived promptly at 7 a.m., prepared breakfast that rivaled the best chefs in Chicago, and managed the household with the precision of a point guard orchestrating a play. But for the past month, something had changed. Dark circles shadowed her face, her easy smile had vanished, and several times, Jordan had caught her crying while ironing his shirts. That afternoon, while Fatima believed Jordan was at a meeting with sponsors, the former Chicago Bulls star made an impulsive decision. He got into his discreet car and followed the bus she had boarded. The vehicle moved slowly through Chicago's streets, leaving the affluent neighborhoods behind and heading toward the city's outskirts. What am I doing? Jordan wondered, keeping his distance. Following my housekeeper like an amateur detective? If the press saw me now, they'd think I've lost my mind. But concern outweighed embarrassment. Fatima wasn't just an employee. She was part of the extended family he had built since retiring from professional basketball. She had been there for birthdays, celebrations, after NBA championships, and the most intimate moments of his family life. Her current sadness pained him as if she were a member of his own family. The bus finally stopped in a neighborhood Jordan barely knew. Modest apartment buildings lined narrow streets where children played basketball with a worn-out ball, reminding Jordan of his own beginnings in Brooklyn, New York. Fatima got off and walked quickly down a narrow path. Jordan waited a few minutes before following, keeping a cautious distance. The Chicago afternoon sun beat down on his head as he moved forward, aware that his globally recognizable figure might draw attention despite his cap and sunglasses. Finally, Fatima stopped in front of a small, more dilapidated building than the others. The door was ajar, and she entered without knocking. Jordan approached carefully, pausing in the shade of a nearby tree. From there, he could hear voices coming from inside. "Michael Jordan? Is that really you?" Jordan turned, startled. Behind him stood a man in his 60s, his eyes wide with disbelief but warm. "You're mistaken, sir," Jordan replied, trying to mask his distinctive North Carolina accent. The man smiled, revealing several missing teeth. "You can't fool me. I'm Nigerian, like your friends. I watched you rise through the TV from your first game with the Bulls." Jordan sighed, removing his sunglasses in surrender. "I'd ask you to be discreet, please. I'm here for something personal." The man glanced at the building where Fatima had entered, his expression shifting. "You're here for the Ben Ali family?" he asked in a grave tone. "Not exactly." Jordan hesitated. "My housekeeper went in there, and I'm worried about her. She's been acting strangely lately." The man let out a long sigh. "So you don't know what's going on?" he said, shaking his head sadly. "That's the apartment of Fatima's son, the boy with leukemia." Jordan felt as if he'd been hit in the chest. Leukemia? Fatima had never mentioned her son was ill. The man placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder, a familiar gesture few would dare with such a celebrity. He was cured 2 years ago after a long fight. The doctor said he'd beaten the disease. The boy went back to college. Everything seemed normal. But it seems the cancer's back, more aggressive this time. Jordan's heart tightened. Fatima, always so private about her personal struggles, always so devoted to others, had carried this burden in silence. "Come," said the man. "Since you're here, you should go in. They need you more than you can imagine." Stunned, Jordan followed the man to the apartment's door. The man knocked softly. "Fatima, it's Samir. Open up, please. I've got someone with me." The door opened, and Fatima appeared, her eyes red and her face frozen in absolute shock upon seeing her employer. "Mr. Jordan?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Fatima, forgive me for showing up like this," Jordan said, feeling a mix of shame and concern. "I got worried seeing you leave so suddenly these past few days." The woman lowered her eyes, visibly uncomfortable. Behind her, Jordan glimpsed a modest but spotless living room. In one corner, a small table held framed family photos. Surprisingly, on the main wall hung a framed poster of Jordan dunking during the 1988 Slam Dunk Contest, surrounded by newspaper clippings of his greatest moments. "Come in, Mr. Jordan," Fatima murmured finally, stepping aside to let him pass. Jordan entered, followed by Samir. The apartment's interior was significantly cooler than Chicago's stifling heat, thanks to an old, noisy fan in the corner. "Mom, who's here?" A faint voice came from an adjacent room. Fatima wiped her face, trying to compose herself. It's Mr. Jordan, Kareem, my employer." There was a silence, followed by sounds of effort and movement. Jordan watched as Fatima rushed to the bedroom, apparently to help someone. After a tense moment, a young man in his 20s appeared in the doorway, supported by his mother. He was painfully thin, his pale complexion stark against the naturally olive skin of people of Nigerian descent. Despite his evident weakness, his eyes lit up upon seeing the legendary athlete. "It's an honor, Mr. Jordan," he said in English, his voice faint but resolute. "I'm sorry I can't welcome you properly." Jordan stepped forward quickly, extending his hand. "I'm the one who should apologize for barging in like this. I came to check on your mother. She seemed preoccupied lately." The two shook hands, Kareem's grip surprisingly firm despite his condition. "I'll make some tea," Fatima said, visibly nervous about having her employer in her modest home. As she disappeared into the small kitchen, Jordan observed Kareem more closely. Despite his illness, it was clear he had once been an athletic young man. A computer science textbook lay open on the coffee table, surrounded by neatly organized handwritten notes. "You study computer science?" Jordan asked, trying to start a natural conversation. Kareem nodded, sitting carefully on the worn sofa. "Software engineering at the University of Illinois, at least until this." He gestured vaguely at his weakened body, a resigned smile on his face. "My mom didn't want you to know," he added softly. "She keeps her professional and personal life separate. She always says your problems are more important than ours." Jordan frowned. Why would she think that? Kareem shrugged weakly. "You're Michael Jordan. You've led the greatest team in the world. Millions of people depend on your decisions. And we're just," he trailed off, searching for words. "You're her family," Jordan finished. "For a mother, nothing's more important." Fatima returned with a tray of mint tea and homemade pastries, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan. I don't have anything fancier to offer." Jordan took the cup she handed him. "This is perfect, Fatima. Your mint tea reminds me of my own mother." An uncomfortable silence settled. Samir, sensing it was time to leave, excused himself discreetly. Once alone, Jordan looked Fatima in the eyes. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" he asked gently. Fatima lowered her gaze, her hands twisting nervously. "It's not your problem, sir. You already have so many responsibilities." Jordan shook his head, touched by her humility. "Fatima, you've been part of our daily life for 8 years. You've taken care of my family, my kids, sometimes even comforted them when they were upset. How could I not care about what's happening to you?" Fatima's eyes filled with tears she tried vainly to hold back. "Kareem's illness came back a month ago, more aggressive this time. The doctors say treatment needs to start immediately, but our savings were drained by the first battle. Insurance doesn't cover all the specialized medications." Her voice broke. "I took a second job on weekends, cleaning offices at night, but it's not enough and time is running out." Jordan set down his cup and sat up straighter, a new determination in his eyes. "How much does the full treatment cost?" Fatima seemed shocked by the direct question. "Sir, I didn't tell you this to how much, Fatima?" Jordan insisted gently. She lowered her head, murmuring a figure that, while significant for a housekeeper, was barely a fraction of a week's endorsement deal for the former athlete turned businessman. Kareem's eyes widened. "You're offering me a job?" Jordan nodded seriously. "Not right away, of course," he clarified. "First, you need to get better. I'll personally cover your medical expenses. Consider it in advance on your future salary." Fatima shook her head vigorously, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "It's too much, sir. We can't accept." Jordan turned to her, his gaze filled with the same calm determination that had made him a respected leader on every court in the world. "Fatima, for 8 years, you've taken care of my family. You've cleaned my house, cooked our meals, sometimes even comforted my kids when they were sad. You're part of our lives. Please, let me help you now." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. Kareem looked at his mother, then at Jordan, grasping the weight of the moment. "I'll repay every dollar, Mr. Jordan," he said with a determination that transcended his physical weakness. "Through my work, my commitment, I promise." Jordan smiled. "I don't doubt it for a second. I saw your diplomas on the wall. Top of your class despite your illness. That's no small feat." He turned back to Fatima. "And you, I want you to take paid leave for as long as needed to support Kareem through his treatment. Juanita and I can manage just fine." Fatima was overwhelmed by emotion, unable to speak. Kareem took her hand and squeezed it tightly, then looked at Jordan. "Why are you doing all this for us, Mr. Jordan?" The former basketball star paused, his gaze drifting momentarily into the distance. "You know, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, my family didn't have much money. But there was always someone to help, a neighbor, a teacher, a coach. That's how I made it out, not alone, but because of a community that believed in me." He locked eyes with Kareem. "What I'm doing today isn't charity. It's just paying back what I received. And maybe one day, you'll do the same for someone else." Months later, Kareem began cutting-edge treatment at one of the best clinics in the U.S. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. His youth and determination worked in his favor. Fatima, relieved of her professional duties but still paid, spent her days by his side, slowly regaining the hope she had lost. Jordan visited regularly, often discreetly through the clinic's back entrance to avoid attention. He brought computer science books, sometimes accompanied by one of his sons, who had struck up a friendship with Kareem. Between chemotherapy sessions, they discussed the app project, Kareem's energy returning when he talked about code and user interfaces. But what no one anticipated was the impact this story would have on Jordan's own family. Juanita, Michael's ex-wife, had taken Fatima under her wing, helping her navigate the complex U.S. healthcare system and sometimes accompanying her to appointments when Kareem was hospitalized. Jordan's children, particularly Jeffrey and Marcus, regularly visited Kareem, playing video games or watching NBA games with him. One evening, as Jordan returned from one of his visits, Juanita noticed his thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly. Jordan was quiet for a moment, then replied, "I'm thinking about all the people like Fatima and Kareem struggling in the shadows. People who work hard, ask for nothing, and keep their dignity despite their hardships." Juanita nodded, understanding where he was going. "You want to do more, don't you?" Jordan nodded. "I think the foundation could create a special program for immigrant families like ours facing serious illnesses. Financial support, of course, but also logistical and administrative help. You know how hard it is to navigate the system when you're from somewhere else." 6 months later, the Fatima program of the Jordan Foundation was officially launched, quietly, in keeping with its founder's legendary discretion, but with significant resources. Leading the development of the app that would help families access resources and support was Kareem, still in treatment, but in remission, gradually regaining his strength and working from a specially equipped office at the Foundation's headquarters. Fatima, meanwhile, had insisted on returning to work for the Jordans, but only part-time. The rest of her time, she devoted to coordinating a group of volunteers, mostly immigrant women like her, who supported the program's beneficiary families, offering the kind of moral and practical support only those who have faced similar trials can truly provide. One day, as Jordan visited the Foundation's offices, he stopped at Kareem's. The young man, though still thin, had regained some color. He was focused on his screen, typing furiously, surrounded by colleagues who listened attentively to his instructions. Jordan watched for a moment without interrupting, feeling a pride he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't the same as the pride of his athletic victories. It was something deeper, more fundamental. Fatima approached quietly and stood by his side. "You saved my son, Mr. Jordan," she said softly. "Not just his life, but his future, his dignity." Jordan shook his head. "No, Fatima, your son saved himself with his strength of character. And you saved us all. She looked at him, surprised. How so? Jordan smiled, still watching Kareem, who was now passionately explaining something to his team. You reminded us what really matters. Not trophies, not money, not fame, but human connection, family, and helping each other. He turned to her, his eyes reflecting a rare emotion for a man usually so reserved. In trying to help you, Fatima, I received the greatest gift, a lesson in humility and courage. And that I can never repay. Fatima smiled in return, understanding that sometimes roles reverse in the most unexpected ways, that even the greatest champions can learn invaluable lessons from those who work in the shadows, and that true greatness isn't measured by trophies in a case, but by the ability to see humanity beyond appearances and social status.